Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be exploring some scary stories from Reddit. And, I really appreciate you stopping by. That means a lot to me. Please hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below, and let me know if you want to see more Reddit-themed videos in the future. Without further ado, let's get right into the stories. This happened a few years ago, back when I was still living with my parents. It was the middle of the night, around 2 in the morning. I'd snuck outside for a cigarette because my mom absolutely hated the smell, and I didn't want to get caught. I went all the way around to the back of the house, right up against the edge of the woods, where I figured no one would notice. I was standing there, lost in the smoke, when I suddenly spotted a figure at the tree line. I looked closer and realized it was Sean, our neighbor. I thought, what the hell is he doing out here at this hour? He was just staring straight at me. I gave him a little wave, but he didn't move. He stood there completely still, like a statue. All of a sudden the air felt thick and heavy, almost hard to breathe, and this strong metallic smell hit me, like the taste of old pennies. The whole situation felt seriously off, but I told myself I was just being paranoid and took another drag. Right then the smoke curled straight into my eyes. Anyone who's ever had that happen knows how bad it burns. You can't help but squeeze your eyes shut and rub them like crazy. It only lasted a couple of seconds. When I opened my eyes again, my heart nearly stopped. Sean was suddenly way closer, like he'd covered the entire distance from the woods to the backyard. In that tiny moment, my eyes were closed. Then he just stopped and stood there, perfectly motionless again. What the fuck is he doing in the woods? What is this? I tried to calm myself down. He raised his hand and waved at me, but the motion was all wrong. Jerky and mechanical, like he didn't actually know how a human arm was supposed to move. I didn't dare look away from him for even a second. I started backing slowly toward the house, eyes locked on him the whole time. As soon as I got inside, I slammed the door and locked it, then ran around the house securing every single door and window. Once that was done, I went downstairs to check the basement door. He was already there, standing right outside the basement window, staring straight in at me. He did that same stiff, twitching wave again. Up close like this, I could finally see how wrong everything was. It was Sean's face, Sean's body, but it wasn't really him. It felt like someone had tried to copy and paste him into reality and done a terrible job. The way his jaw hung slack and lifeless triggered the strongest uncanny valley feeling I've ever had. It crawled all over my skin. I let out a scream that could have woken the dead and bolted upstairs. I ran straight into my stepdad, who looked panicked and asked what the hell was going on. I stammered that someone was outside. He grabbed his gun and went out to check, but there was no one there. The next day, I asked Sean about it. He had no idea what I was talking about. At the time, I'd never even heard the word Skinwalker. But after reading up on them online later, I'm almost 100% sure that's exactly what I saw that night. I grew up in a small town on the Gulf of Mexico. Our neighborhood sat right next to a wide open field, and beyond that field was the bay. The house I grew up in had a layout where my bedroom and my parents' bedroom were on opposite sides of the living room, the same room where the front door was. I'd stay up way later than my parents most nights, and they never really cared since I wasn't causing any trouble, just grinding away at video games. Anyway, that particular night I had dozed off mid-battle playing Super Mario RPG on my SNES. I snapped awake when I heard my dad calling me out to the living room. I climbed out of bed and shuffled out of my room into a house that was completely dark. Not a single light on anywhere. "Dad?" I called out. I can't remember his exact words, but he said my name and told me to come to where he was. The living room was empty, and like I said, pitch black, except for a thin slice of amber light from the street lamp bleeding through the curtains. "Dad?" I called again. He answered, but this time, the voice was coming from the other side of the front door. Looking back, it's obvious something was wrong, but when you're a kid and you hear your dad's voice in the middle of the night, your first instinct isn't suspicion, you just think he needs help with something. I moved toward the front door slowly. Really slowly. Partly out of confusion. Partly because I was still half asleep. As I got closer, "Dad!" called for me again. Then again, and a third time, each call friendly but with an edge of urgency underneath it. I was close enough to reach out and touch the door handle. I froze. Something felt slightly off. Maybe I was sleepwalking, maybe I was caught in some weird half-dream state. I stood still for a few seconds and just took stock of my surroundings, let reality settle in. That pause gave me enough time to actually wake up all the way and pay attention. I was fully conscious. Wide awake, no question about it. Dad? Silence. Dad? And then the voice came again, this time sharp and stern. The same tone he'd use when I was in trouble. Get out here, now. I remember thinking, oh man, this is serious, and I reached for the door handle. What are you doing? It was my mom, standing right behind me. Her voice hit me completely out of nowhere, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Scariest I'd ever been startled in my life, though that record wouldn't last long. I told her what I thought was happening. Dad's outside calling for me. I thought he needed help with something. She said it simply, no drama. Your father is asleep in bed. That sentence is one of the most vivid memories I own. Just thinking about it still gives me chills. That was it. The new record, the most terrified I have ever been in my life. I knew with absolute certainty I hadn't been dreaming. I hadn't been sleepwalking. I remembered waking up, remembered it clearly, and the voice had started almost immediately after. It might have been what woke me up in the first place. I didn't know how to process what my mom had just told me. I was completely drained, that hollow, boneless exhaustion you feel when something truly terrible lands on you all at once. I mumbled goodnight, stumbled back to my room, and collapsed on the floor until I passed out from sheer emotional exhaustion. I've never heard anything like it since. I've been telling this story for 20 years now, always the same way, because it's one of the clearest memories I have from childhood. I'm obviously not going to sit here and swear it was a Skinwalker. I genuinely have no idea what happened out there, but I have heard that they use tricks like that to lure people out. The only thing I know for certain is something was there that night, and it almost had me. I've posted a few Skinwalker stories on here before, but I finally decided it was time to share this one. It's hard for me to remember every tale my Navajo family told around the fire, but this particular nightmare happened to me personally. The details are still burned into my mind like they happened yesterday. It started when my two older brothers, David and Luke's girlfriend, Sarah, piled into the car and drove down into the Red Rock Desert for a weekend of fresh air and target practice. We were deep in Resland, Navajo country, where the dirt is that unmistakable blood-red color you only see in southern Utah. If you ever get the chance, go. The place is breathtakingly beautiful. We brought a couple of handguns and headed to a spot the locals call Devil's Heartbeat. I'd never been there before, but the other three knew it well. It was a narrow canyon that dropped about 200 feet straight down. We parked at one end, right on the rim. To our left was a sheer cliff plunge. Across the canyon rose towering rock walls. On the far side, clearly visible even from where we stood, were the ancient Anasazi ruins, cliffs dotted with old dwellings, ladders, and petroglyphs. Historians and Navajo people have different ideas about what happened to the Anasazi, but one thing every Navajo kid grows up knowing is this: you don't mess with those ruins. The old stories say the Anasazi didn't simply vanish. They stepped into another world and left everything behind. Bowls, tools, food still on the tables. My family had always steered clear of the sites, and I'd never questioned it. I figured it was just respect for history. The others didn't care about any of that. They were too busy setting up targets and popping off rounds. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop staring at the ruins across the canyon. Even from a distance I could make out the stone beds, the wooden ladder still leaning against the walls, the faint paintings on the rock. Then something strange took hold of me. A powerful magnetic pull I can't explain. It wasn't normal curiosity. It felt like the ruins themselves were calling me, demanding I come closer. I grabbed a rope and started working my way down the cliff face, planning to cross the canyon floor and climb up the other side. It was an incredibly stupid idea, but my brain felt foggy, like someone else was steering. I kept slipping and wedging myself between boulders, getting more and more frustrated. Then a deep, guttural growl erupted from the bottom of the canyon. The floor was thick with brush, so I couldn't see anything, but the sound made me think mountain lion instantly. I scrambled back up the rope like my life depended on it. I didn't say a word to the others. We kept shooting for a while longer. The next weird thing happened while Sarah was lining up a shot. Everything went unnaturally quiet. Then, from maybe 20 feet behind us, came a low growl that turned into a raspy, choking laugh, like a mountain lion and a hyena had somehow merged. We spun around, but the rim was completely empty. What made it worse was that David, Sarah, and I heard it at a distance, while Luke swore the sound had come from right next to his ear. That night we decided to camp right there to see if anything else would happen. By then I was genuinely scared. We didn't have sleeping bags or a tent. Just a few blankets spread on the ground under a sky full of stars and a small campfire. I dozed off, but a few hours later I woke up to find everyone else already wide awake, eyes huge, listening. The entire canyon was alive with sound. The only way I can describe it is rocks being slammed together. One loud clack from about 1,000 feet away, then an answering clack from 800 feet, then another from maybe 200 feet. The echoes bounced off the walls, turning the canyon into a giant stone drum. It had rhythm, like some kind of twisted Morse code. We lay there in silence for about 10 minutes. No night birds, no animals, just that steady rock-on-rock knocking. Finally, David, the toughest, most skeptical one of us, couldn't take it anymore. He sat up and bellowed, "Shut the hell up!" Instant silence. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would crack a rib. We just stared at each other. Then the real horror started. From the direction of the Anasazi ruins came a high-pitched whinnying sound, like a zebra, that slowly grew louder and more frantic. The rock banging resumed, but now it was mixed with every kind of animal noise you can imagine. Wolves howling, owls hooting, monkeys screeching. That one made my skin crawl the most, all layered over the constant zebra cries. We didn't even talk about it. In under 10 minutes we'd stamped out the fire, rolled up the blankets, and were speeding out of there with the sound still echoing behind us. Back home, I was still shaking. Before I went to bed, my Navajo adoptive mother sat down beside me. She could tell something was wrong even though we hadn't said a word. I spilled the whole story about the canyon and the ruins. Her face turned grave. She told me something I'd never heard before. The spirits in those ruins lure people up the cliffs. Once you reach the top, they push you off. That's why our family never goes near them. A few weeks later, I was back at my night shift call center job in Salt Lake City. Ever since the trip, I'd felt uneasy, like something was watching me. My brothers had even warned that a skinwalker might have latched onto me, but I brushed it off. That night, I stepped outside with some coworkers for fresh air, even though I don't smoke. I hung back by the glass door because I had this heavy, dark cloud feeling hanging over me. I told myself I was being ridiculous and forced myself to walk all the way out into the parking lot to prove I wasn't afraid. That's when I saw it. About 100 feet away, something was limping across the pavement. It looked like a dog, maybe a gray greyhound, grayish in color, but something was very wrong. Its legs were covered in blood, and it moved more like a person crawling on all fours than an actual dog. Its hips swayed in this grotesque, unnatural way. When I made that soft kissing noise to call it over, it stopped but didn't turn its head, the way no normal dog ever would. Then it slowly looked back over its shoulder at me. The eyes were far too big and completely human. Its teeth were crooked and jagged, like it was ready to tear into something. It let out a growl that turned into a high, whistling sound. Nothing an animal could make. It sounded like it was trying to speak or mocking me. And then I noticed the final, stomach-turning detail. It had no tail. In every Navajo story I'd ever heard, when a skinwalker takes animal form, it never has a tail. All my tough guy logic vanished. I spun around and sprinted back into the building, slamming the glass door behind me. When I looked out again, it was gone. I told my brothers what happened. They didn't doubt me for a second. They performed cleansing ceremonies for me, for my apartment, and for their own homes. I never saw that bloody tailless dog again, and to this day I have never gone anywhere near another ancient cliff dwelling.